And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Sunday, December 1st, 2024. And we're looking ahead here into early in the week. What will the general aviation weather look like across the state of Alaska? We currently have an area of low pressure down here in the North Pacific. It'll extend northeastward into the Gulf with a front that is pushed up into the Panhandle. That's going on right now late this Sunday morning, the 1st. It's producing heavier snow in the central northern Panhandle and up along the intercoastal mountains. Generally rain areas south of Sitka and down toward Ketchikan, Metlakatla, as there is warmer air trying to ride northward, and as it encounters the colder air, heavier snow, Juneau on up towards Skagway and the northern portion of the Panhandle, and even a little bit of freezing rain mixed in. So, but we're going to continue to see milder, warmer air come up at least in through the southern portions of the Panhandle this Sunday night into Monday morning. So it'll be mainly rain down across here, but low ceilings. Reduced visibility, either in precipitation or fog, and also winds. We have some stronger gusty winds that could lend toward some low-level wind shear as well as turbulence. Meanwhile, to the west, we've had a little core of colder Arctic air push southwestward off of the Yukon and Kuskokwim basins, and it's heading southwestward across the Bering. And it's also causing some area of lower ceilings cloud cover here out over the south central Bering as a result, with some colder temperatures and gusty winds. By the time we get into Monday afternoon, we find still IFR conditions across the Panhandle and up across the northeastern Gulf Coast as a result of the ongoing event. We also have IFR conditions along the Alaska Peninsula, southern parts of the Kodiak Island, as yet another low is going to be coming up out of the North Pacific, and it's going to bring in a whole nother front again that will bring a renewed round of precipitation along the Gulf Coast with a little warmer temperatures. So maybe not initially the cold air in place here, that's going to be eroding away in time. If anything, through the week, we're going to see temperatures slowly warming across south central, southeast mainland in through the Panhandle, as temperatures are expected to be average above normal later this coming week as a result of this pattern shift. Meanwhile, the cold air has induced a weak low along and north of the Aleutians, and it's created also some lower cloud cover, perhaps even some areas of fog as a result as it works its way just out here, sits out here over the lower Bering Sea. Meanwhile, VFR conditions across the mainland, still high pressure in place, the center kind of moving southeastward. It's not quite as strong of a high as what we've seen. We've seen some 1050 highs already this season. It's going to be just below 1040 millibars, but keep the coldest air out over the Yukon Northwest Territories, though we'll still see sub-zero readings down around 30 below in some of the normally cold spots. By Tuesday, here comes the hints of that next low and the frontal system. Extensive IFR conditions creeping northward through the lower Gulf, North Pacific, down along the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island. We have some lingering IFR from the initial system that's come in this weekend along the intercoastal mountains of the Panhandle, with MVFR conditions all along the Gulf Coast and Panhandle. VFR continues interior and in the far north, and then Tuesday afternoon, as that moisture rides northward, we're going to see rain, snow mix, along with gusty winds with this front. As the low sits here, it's going to kind of pull back toward the Alaska Peninsula and force this moist, breezy front all along the Gulf Coast, including the Panhandle again. So extensive IFR all along the Gulf Coast into the Panhandle, and even trying to creep up southeast side of the Alaska Range and back out here into areas of the southeast Bering Sea. So Anatuvik Pass up there way in the north, VFR conditions across the Brooks Range, and Adigan Pass as well, VFR down across the Alaska Range for that matter. Until you get down the West Arm, we're going to see VFR conditions Lake Clark and Merrill early Monday, giving way to MVFR conditions as we start to get some upslope flow coming into that area. Rainy Pass VFR becoming MVFR by Monday afternoon. Windy Pass should hold on to VFR conditions, and as you go further east, that'll be the case across the Alaska Range, Isabel, Mentasta VFR, and then dropping down the Copper River Basin, Tanita Pass VFR. Portage, we'll see MVFR conditions out over Prince William Sound area, and that's going to try to pull back in at least into the eastern portion of Portage Pass Monday afternoon. And then, of course, Chilkoot and White socked in with the IFR conditions throughout the day Monday, with renewed IFR conditions coming in, especially Tuesday afternoon, evening, or at least reinforcing that. So here's the way the pattern's shaping up. We do have some mid-upper level ridging in place. The low track is doing something like this. Initially, the lows come up, it weakens out over the Gulf. That's what's currently causing the weather this Sunday across the Panhandle. That will weaken as we go into Monday. Precipitation not be quite as heavy or breezy conditions, and then that second low is going to come up out of the North Pacific and pull back toward the Alaska Peninsula just southwest of Kodiak Island. But a long front will just pull up right within the curvature of the Gulf, bringing another round of precipitation. That'll include rain, snow, and maybe even a little bit of an icy mix, as just overall a moist, a little warmer flow of air comes up into this area. Meanwhile, back across the Aleutians there, you can see the freezing line, surface freezing line is pushed south of the eastern and central Aleutians there Monday morning. Icing still going on areas of the Panhandle, generally above 6,000 feet central, above 8,000 feet far southern. Areas along the Gulf Coast where there is precipitation above 4,000 feet in those precipitation producing clouds. And looking at the upper level jet stream pattern, well, we have the one low that's induced by the cold air being pulled out over the lower Bering. That's heading southwestward, and it's just going to kind of sit here. The low will just ride along and north of the Aleutians early in the week. Not a major player. Next low coming up in this southwest flow is going to come up out in the North Pacific here at the bottom of the screen. Mid-levels on Monday afternoon. Notice the southwest flow pulling in just especially southern portion of the Panhandle and up into the mountains of British Columbia across Haida Gwaii. We're seeing winds as high as 50, 60 knots. Back here to the west, there's this low circulation that's going to kind of just pull back toward the southwest. Strongest winds are out here over the northern western Bering, 50, 60 knots. Some of that southerly flow in the mid-levels coming up here into the lower Yukon, Kuskokwim deltas. And then at 3,000 feet, we still have that southwest flow. And it's generally coming out from the North Pacific up and across Haida Gwaii into the British Columbia coastline as high as 50 knots there. Then back to the west, there are some stronger winds still along the middle Yukon Valley that'll be running 40 to 60 knots out of the east, and that extends back across the Bering Strait. So this will be a zone of turbulence through here. And then also we have the low circulation, the backside of it, and ahead of it southeast winds as this low just pulls back to the south and west, with a new low coming up for Tuesday out of the North Pacific heading back toward south of Kodiak Island and forcing another front into the Gulf. So on Monday, turbulence looks like this. Surface to 6,000 feet here and across the Panhandle, southern areas, especially south end of Prince of Wales Island, and then down across Haida Gwaii could be even some isolated severe turbulence along with low-level wind shear. Back up further north with this cold easterly flow, we have moderate turbulence through the middle Yukon Valley, Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, back along the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, surface to 4,000 feet, surface to 3,000 feet, out over the islands, St. Matthew and St. Lawrence. And then further south, we have turbulence along the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula, surface to 4,000 feet, and then perhaps a little bit of isolated moderate turbulence back out here in the western Aleutians, surface to 3,000 feet because being on the backside of that low circulation. But again, this will transition to the next system coming up, so there'll likely be some other enhanced areas of turbulence developing here Tuesday into early Wednesday with the arrival of the next system.